Hey, what's going on, guys? As you already know, I'm a big Berserk fan, and I thought it would be cool if we started a video series in which I go back through all the chapters of Berserk and reread them with you and give some explanation, do a little trivia in between, and give some context to certain situations, and talk about the themes, the symbols, where stuff came from in terms of like movie references and book references. So yeah, without further ado, guys, let's start with Berserk, the Black Swordsman. Alright, so this kicks off volume 1 of the series, a very nice piece of cover art right here. We got Guts on the cover. Of course, at this point in the story, we don't know who his name is, but we see he's got black spiky hair, a sword, various arrows in his hand, and a repeating crossbow. And if you look closely enough, you can already see his mechanical arms. So something has happened in this guy's past that is truly gruesome and has caused him a lot of pain and anger. And then we see a picture of Guts hanging from some sort of structure. He's bleeding on his chest and his arms. It looks like he's being tortured. So already we could tell that this guy is down on his luck, is going through a lot of pain and suffering, and doesn't look like he's really happy with his disposition in life. Now in the opening panel, Guts is screwing this woman. Now, what a way to kick off a manga, guys. I mean, have the main character screwing a woman. How else do you top that? How else can you get more provocative than this? But of course, as we can see with the arm, something's not quite right with this woman. There's some sort of transformation that's going on, and I think Guts is starting to realize at this point that this is not like the other in-town whores that he's been with. This one's a little bit more special. And then she squeezes her legs around Guts and says, "You fell into my trap, fool. This is your last taste of heaven before I send you to hell." But not easily surprised, Guts pulls out his cannon and says, "The only one that is trapped is you, bitch." Sticks it down her throat and just blasts her head right off. Now, of course, this opening scene comes from a Conan the Barbarian movie in which Conan has sex with a witch and then tosses her ass in the fire. So Mira is paying homage to two things right here: Conan the Barbarian and Arnold Schwarzenegger, who turns out to be the basis for Guts. You know, a big hulking man. Yeah, we can already see some references that has inspired Mira and what that might portend into the future. Now, eventually Guts goes into the town of Coca for unknown reasons. We see that there's various people sitting around on the sidewalks. It looks like they might be a little bit poor, so you gotta wonder what led to these sort of conditions. And as Guts is walking into the town, he looks at a caravan of what looks to be slaves and a girl with some long dark hair that's staring at him. We then see some Coca thugs in a bar as they're torturing an elf. You know, they got a noose around his neck, they're throwing daggers at him, and just making his life a living hellhole. Guts, not enjoying what he's seeing, decides to pull out his crossbow with a couple of arrows and decides to shoot him at the Coca thugs. Now, trivia question number 1, guys. The first human that Guts kills in the Berserk manga is Igor. You know, to be honest with you, I did not remember that myself, but so interesting little bit of trivia for you guys there. The first apostle he killed was the female apostle, and then the first human he kills is Igor, one of the Coca thugs. Now Guts proceeds to shoot his repeating crossbow at the various Coca thugs, and this is the first time that we get to see the repeating crossbow. So we saw the cannon earlier, but now we see that he's got this repeating crossbow, so he's got a lot of versatility here. But as we soon find out, that's not going to be his only weapon. Guts then shoots one of the Coca thugs in the nose and then sticks the arrow into the table. He then tells one of the Coca thugs to deliver a message. "The Black Swordsman has come. That is all." And then as the man is repeating his name, Guts pulls out his massive sword and slices one of the Coca thugs right in half from the torso. Blood is spewing everywhere. The massive sword is just breaking the ground, creating a huge mess. As the viewer, you gotta be wondering to yourself, like, how the heck can a single man wield a sword like this? And then as everyone is staring in shock, everyone begins to wonder. It was much too big to be called a sword. Massive, thick, heavy, and far too rough. Indeed, it was like a heap of raw iron. Guts tells the thug that he's counting on him to pass on his message and then proceeds to leave the bar. Now, the fairy that was being tortured in the bar ends up going to Guts and wants to thank him for saving his life. Turns out his name is Puck, and he was traveling with a troupe of performers before getting trapped by the Coca thugs. Turns out they locked him up in a bird cage and even soaked him in a wine bottle. Now, as it turns out, the town has been attacked multiple times, but the mayor has made a deal with the thugs. Unfortunately, because Guts just created a stir in the town, that deal's probably going to be off for the time being. And Puck even warns Guts that they'll probably catch him and cut him up into pieces. Now, Puck tries to sit on Guts' shoulder, but Guts just swats him right off. Now, this is the first time that we realize that Guts does not like to be touched. Now because of this distraction, various knights and guards are now pointing their crossbow at Guts, and it looks like he's cornered. It looks like he's got no way out. And as a result, they hang him, they start torturing him, and start bloodying him up. Now despite all the torturing, Guts doesn't even make a single noise. He just sits there and takes it. Now because of all the weapons that they confiscated from Guts, they're starting to wonder, like, who is this guy? Is he out to start a war? What's his whole deal? Now the mayor of the town looks very scared. He says, because you murdered those men, this town may very well be destroyed. Turns out that the ruler of these men is beyond human, and is something horrible and incomprehensible. No one can kill him, at least not anyone human. Now, Guts claims that he knows all about this type of person. He says that he's a monster and that he eats human flesh. And as it turns out, the wagon full of women and children turned out to be his sustenance, which is very gruesome and dark to think about. Guts then claims that the mayor is only out to protect himself, so the torturer decides to burn him a little bit. One of the Baron's men then informs him about the Black Swordsman, someone that the Baron seems to know about. The mayor then arrives as the Baron is eating his meal and attempts to apologize for what happened earlier with the vagrant, i.e. the Black Swordsman. The mayor then attempts to negotiate with the Snake Baron, but the Snake Baron tosses a human ear towards him. The Baron then looks at a suit of armor and says that all he cares about is the sound of snapping bones crushed under the hoofs of his horses. I don't even need an excuse. None at all. We then see a dark shadow looming over the castle as the Snake Baron says, "The Black Swordsman?" Guts then begins to wallow in his prison cell as he notices a hunk of flesh off in the corner of the room. And the first words out of his mouth are, "You again?" So this is something that has tortured him in the past and looks like it's been part of his life for quite some time now. "Get away from me!" Puck then enters the prison cell with a set of keys. He tells Gut that he's come to repay his debt and that elves have a strong sense of duty. He begins to touch Guts once again, but Guts just yells at him. Puck's body begins to glow brilliantly as he touches Guts and heals his wounds. We elves got all sorts of powers. We can heal wounds, we can sense people's emotions, we can even make people happy. And after this is done, the Black Swordsman finally admits that his name is Guts. Puck then notices a strange marking on the Black Swordsman's back, something that appears to be engraved into his very skin. Guts remarks that it's the brand, but he doesn't elaborate any further on this. "You'll find out soon enough, as well as burn this whole town to the ground." Now, Puck is worried about the fact that all the townspeople within the town are going to get burned down as well, but Guts doesn't seem to care about that whatsoever. So this is very interesting because in a lot of manga, even if you have this brazen, violent main character, they usually have some redeeming qualities, but Guts seems to kill without equivocation. He doesn't really care who it is, as long as he's accomplishing his goals. So, a very interesting portrayal here. His philosophy is summed up in this quote: "If someone can't live their life the way they please, they might as well die." So essentially for Guts, you're either strong, you protect yourself, and you live the way you want, or you're weak and you suffer and you die. Puck then gets a sinking feeling in his stomach and mentions that he feels rage, sadness, and fear within this man. Puck then wonders why Guts would save him, but Guts responds by saying that no one would save his life, making the elf mad and sad at the same time. After Puck leaves the prison cell, Guts notices a pair of keys on the ground. He then notices the back of his neck is bleeding where the brand is, starts to lick the blood and says, "I've been waiting for you." Puck then flies through the town, noticing that all the buildings are burning down. Horrible! A group of mercenaries on horses ravage the town, killing anyone they see in their sights. Of course, they're led by the man who's drinking blood from a dead child that's stuck to his weapon. The Snake Baron urges his men to burn everything to the ground, as Puck wonders how horrible this is. The Black Swordsman then emerges from a body of corpses. He then uses his repeating crossbow to take out many men, showing them absolutely no mercy whatsoever. He then gets ambushed from the rear, but pulls out his Dragon Slayer, slices off the head of the horse and the man in one swing. And trust me when I say this, guys, this is going to be one of many horses that have their bodies dismembered in the series. The Snake Baron then proceeds to walk forward to engage his new foe. "So you're the Black Swordsman, the one who's been hunting us apostles." So this is the first time that we hear the word apostles in the series. And we have to assume, based on all the information given, especially with the woman dying in the first couple of panels, that apostles are some sort of monsters that ravage the land. Guts then uses his crossbow to shoot the Snake Baron in the face, landing a bow right in his eye. He proceeds to shoot him several more times, looking like he's finally got him. Unfortunately, as he checks out the dead body, a huge tail whips him across the chest. He then goes flying through the air as his crossbow is lost in the process. It's futile. No matter how many bolts you shoot at me, a mere human like you can't possibly kill me. We then finally get a look at the Apostle, also known as the Snake Baron, who looks truly horrifying. Even his men get scared of him, as the Snake Baron claims that he's gonna eat Guts. Puck urges Guts to run away, but unfortunately the Snake Baron is too quick for him. The Snake Baron continues to smack him around with his tail, causing Guts to cough up blood in the process. Nevertheless, most humans would have been dead by now, so we know that Guts has some strong durability to withstand so many of these attacks. Unfortunately, it looks like he's at the end of his rope. Or maybe it's that he's yanking on a rope with his teeth. Because as he does so, a compartment in his hand opens up, and then we see a small cannon blasting the Snake Baron in the face. The Snake Baron then writhes in pain as Guts takes this opportunity to slash him across the body. And as Puck gets a good look at Guts, it truly looks like Guts himself is a horrifying monster. I mean, if you put the Snake Baron and Guts side by side, you'd be hard pressed to tell me that Guts doesn't look like a monster himself. And then to rub insult into injury, Guts proceeds to torture the monster by shooting many bows into his face. And because the Apostles believe that humans are weak creatures, Guts wants to give the Snake Baron a little bit of a taste of his own medicine. The Snake Baron immediately recognizes the brand of sacrifice on his neck. So Guts says, "The God Hand. Where are the 5 members of the God Hand?" Guts then lights the Snake Baron on fire. "Take your time and savor it, as your body is slowly burned to ashes." The Snake Baron begs for someone to save his life, as we see Puck shuddering in horror as Guts clenches onto his chest. So already right now, even though we've seen that Guts is this brutal savage, there is some part of his humanity still left. Although it's very faint at this moment. And finally, having done what he wanted to accomplish, Guts puts his Dragon Slayer back on his back and walks out of the town without another word.